Welcome to this short video about drawing sheet music with a pencil. I have, I'm going to say 4 tools here that I'm going to be using today to do this little demo. Tool number 1 is a piece of 8.5 by 11 paper, which I like to think of as a tool. A lot goes into making a piece of 8.5 by 11 paper. It's very smooth to the touch, no imperfections on the surface. It's cut perfectly square, so sometimes you can use the edges of it to make straight lines. You base your line on the edge that you see on the page. Of course, you can't see the edges here. I'm zoomed in so much that you can't see this entire piece of paper. The pencil, obviously, important tool. Got a Dixon Ticonderoga B1 today. I don't have any particular affinity for the B1 over a HB2. B1 is a little softer, makes slightly darker lines. HB I use a lot too. Tool number 3, eraser. Certainly get a lot of use out of that, although I try not to make mistakes that inevitably come up. And one of the great things about working with a pencil is that you can erase those mistakes and fix them. And my last tool is off-screen pencil sharpener. I sharpen my pencil a lot when I'm doing this kind of thing. So I'm going to start out here by drawing some lines. I draw a few construction lines every time I start working on a project. And I usually draw these really, really light because I erase them later, but I'm kind of worried they're not going to show up. So I might draw them a little darker than I normally do, but I'm just creating some lines. This is where I'm going to put maybe the title of the piece. I'm going to draw here a boundary for the left-hand side. Kind of hurts me to draw these so dark because I know I'm going to erase them later, and the darker it gets, the harder it is to erase, but we'll stick with this. And then I'll put some direction here, like moderately. A lot of my pieces start with the word moderately. And then we'll start drawing some staff, and I do draw the staff by hand. I usually draw it really, really light to start, but we'll go a little darker for the purposes of this. And I try to get the first one as straight as I can because I base the next ones off of it. And if I have any philosophy about this whole enterprise, it's be forgiving of your abilities. It's not easy to make a straight line when you're doing it by hand. And some of you are like, why is he bothering? Just get a ruler, man. But you know what? I decided one day that if I was going to do this stuff by hand, I was going to do it fully by hand. And it does give a kind of completeness to the final output. The whole thing just kind of has a look to it. You do some things with a ruler, then it's like that stuff looks like you did it with a ruler, and the stuff that you didn't do with a ruler kind of conflicts with it. Most of my music is for voice and musical instrument, something on the grand staff. And today I think I'm just going to draw a grand staff on here. This process is so painstakingly slow that anything I can do to save a little time I think is going to make the video a little more watchable. And I'm sure you're seeing all of the imperfections of my work here, as I am. But again, the whole point of doing this is that it be kind of fun. And so allow yourself those mistakes. I frequently just sigh and move on. I'm only as good at it as I am. You'll notice I'm kind of going back and forth here I do one line over to the right and then one line over to the left, and kind of got this concept that if I tend to make certain mistakes when I'm going this way, that maybe I'll make the opposite mistakes when I come back, and it'll all even itself out. I have no idea if that's actually true. But here we've got some basic staff lines, and I'm going to go over these again to kind of firm them up later, but let's call that good enough for the moment. Ultimately going to put a brace here, and I try to get the brace, more or less in the middle. Not going to be perfect, but and maybe I will start erasing a little bit of these construction lines. I've always kind of thought of music notation as being an artwork, and so it's one of the things that's driven me to continue trying to improve my skills here. I do think it's, beautiful. I've got a particular sort of swirly way that I do my clefs. I think clefs are a good place to kind of express yourself. Everybody knows what they are and how they work. Treble clef, bass clef. So if you do something a little fancy with it, it puts your stamp on it. And people have really drawn them differently over the course of history. I am going to put a couple measures of a piece of mine on here. I'm obviously not composing right now. I'm just notating. So I have my composition book where I, write out my music, and I'm going to just do a measure or two of a couple measures from a piece titled Kinglet, and I'm just putting the instrumentation on here. So am I in here presently in key of A? Just sketching in these marks. I'll do a better job with them later. And we are in 3/4 time. One interesting thing about doing this stuff by hand is that I'd never really had to think about exactly what stuff looks like. Like, what exactly does 3/4 look like? What does the 3 look like? What does the 4 look like? You have so many technical tools at your disposal. A lot of people use computer programs. I've certainly used Sibelius and Lilypond and MuseScore and all that stuff. And when you use those programs, you don't really need to know what the 3 and the 4 look like. And it's been a fun learning aspect of doing stuff by hand too, is that you learn what things look like. And in that regard, there is a book that I highly recommend for you called Behind Bars. I don't know if I can get this on my screen here, by Elaine Gould. This is an incredible book that kind of like a Chicago manual of style for what things look like. It's just information about how things look, where they're placed. An enormous tome that I highly recommend, and I use it as a reference constantly when I'm trying to figure out what things look like. What does a sharp look like? What does the 3 look like in 3/4 time? All of that kind of thing. And as I start notating, even there, some of the simplest things, I didn't really know what things looked like. So as a for instance, if you're going to draw a note, how tall is the stem of that note? I didn't know. That if it is not modulated by other concerns, your stems will be about an octave long. And here again, I'm just kind of sketching some stuff in, not drawing things very darkly. So much to learn about all of this business, writing in two voices here. So I've got my kind of soprano voice here, sort of alto voice down here. One does space the music to a degree. You give a little more space to a dotted quarter note than you do to an eighth note. And right now, actually, I'm in the middle of a triplet, which is going to be a little narrower. And again, just kind of sketching things here for the moment. I am making some of these stems a little bit short because they're, and you know, maybe I should have left more space in between my staves here. In fact, I am going to have to give myself a little extra breathing room here because the bass line is right up here. Oh my goodness. People are going to be making fun of me now. It's probably good to see me erasing a bunch though. So yes, in retrospect, I definitely put these staves too close together. Sigh. Move on. What's that? Oh, sorry, I think my pencil is talking to me. What's that? Oh yeah, needs to get sharpened. Pencil likes to get sharpened a lot. I'll let it crawl off here. Go to the sharpener. Comes back. Hello. I sharpen that pencil all the time. I love my electric pencil sharpener. It is constantly in use. Trying to align things vertically too, so that the things that are happening on one side of the equation are also happening directly below the things. That vertical arrangement is another thing that you don't really have to worry about when you're using a computer program. And the line runs all the way through and you're dealing with a grand staff, as I am here. And continuing on, got a big tie that I'm going to use to join these two notes. Ties have kind of bedeviled me. It's like you want them to be nice and symmetrical and not too high. But in the end, they're not really supposed to command too much attention. You know what I mean? Continuing here to work in two voices on that top stave. And continuing to be a little crammed in. But, you know, you just do the best you can. It does take a long time. I don't really feel like I'm super awesome at this. But I'm as good as I can be. One of the reasons I'm making this actually is that there used to be a video on YouTube. It was one of the ones that inspired me when I first was kind of starting to think about doing this kind of thing. A guy had made a video that was all about using a pencil to notate, and it was a super great video, and I was really impressed with his work. And then it got taken down. I'm going to put an end to this as if this is like the end of a massive piece. Which it's not, it's just the middle something. And just erase the remainder. So I don't know what I'm gonna... Oh, anyway, this guy, yeah, such a great video. And he was more into different tools. I've always been kind of a minimalist, so I got onto this idea of like, you know, only use the pencil. But he had all these different pencils that he used. He had mechanical pencils, he had B1s and HBs and very hard pencils that he used for sketching things in, lighter pencils, and he could get different line widths with the different mechanical pencils he had and all this stuff. It was great. And it's gone. I can't find it anymore online, so I kind of decided I should make one to replace that. I'm going to do moderately here since I said that I would. And my title, I don't know, what should my title be? I'm going to title it Example. And the kind of style guide here that I'm using in terms of how I do fonts and whatnot, I basically have just kind of invented this for myself. And I have worked on lettering and stuff for a long time. Again, not that I'm the most incredible letterer you'll ever see, but I guess I just say that I don't know. I used to watch those like how to draw things where you have some amazing artist and it's like first you start with a circle and then the next thing you know you've got this incredible bumblebee. And when I was a kid I was always like, man, my bumblebee looks like shit. So I don't know, maybe it does take a little practice to get even as good as I've gotten at lettering. So we've got this basically sketched in now, and then my last step will be to go back through this and I should add how loud is this going to be. Let's cram in a little mezzo piano here. What does the MP look like of mezzo piano? You can consult Behind Bars by Elaine Gold. Here's my best for the moment. I'll call that good enough. So I do just start going back over this and trying to fill things in. First thing I'll do, I guess, is go back over my title here and try to get that looking sharp. Usually when I'm doing this, I move the paper around a lot so that I can only draw, I can draw all of everything from the best angle that I have for it. Some angles are easier for me to draw straight lines in than others. For this, I have taped the piece of paper to my desk because oh man, that M, a little lopsided there, isn't it? I wanted to make sure I never went outside the frame. So yeah, taped it down. And I do try to get my lines straight, and I've spent some time getting better at drawing straight lines. The thing about the human body is that it really isn't meant for drawing straight lines. Everything wants to do curves. You put your elbow down, that's a curve. You put your wrist down, that's a curve. Curves everywhere, and all of a sudden we're like obsessed with straight lines all the time, and if you think about it, like even the retina is curved. Like everything is curved. Everything in this equation is curved, and we're trying to draw straight lines. Sometimes I feel like when I look at these, I can't actually start sensing the curve of my own retina, like everything. And I've worked on my cursive to a degree too in my life. I'm semi-proud of it. Some nice, moderately tempoed music here. Well, now that I've said I'm proud of my cursive, I actually don't think that looks very great, but sigh. Move on. Here's my MP. And believe it or not, I am going to go back over all of this to flesh it out. Here's a question. How old are you? I am 49. And when I was younger, I could sit and do this kind of thing for hours on end. But at this point in my life, I find it is very important to occasionally stand up and stretch out your back. So let's do that. Did a little calisthenics there. Back at it. Take care of your back. You only get one. And this is this is like one of the extreme sports of sitting. A lot of people get sidelined with injuries. Oh gosh, some of these look pretty bad. One interesting thing about, thinking about this stuff as an artwork, like the artwork part of it, you want it to like look cool, but it's also a mode of communication, and there is, a very little difference between this being on the line for E and it being on the line for F sharp. And I have found over the years that the more I indulge the art side of what's happening, the less usable it is for purposes of communicating music. So I'm drawing my big finale lines here. I try to do this in such a way that I don't end up running my hand back over what I've done. So I am, as you can see, more or less working from top to bottom and just filling in the second part of this here. Half notes are shaded. In what direction does the shading go? The shading of a half note goes like this. Different direction than from a whole note. All covered in Elaine Gould's excellent book, Behind Bars. And the shapes of these note heads also kind of heading up and to the right. I'm getting them as good as I can. There's always going to be some kind of variety. And the beam. How thick is a beam? Also covered in Elaine Gould's excellent book. Beam is typically about half as thick as one space of the line there. So many lessons to learn that you don't have to think about if you're using a computer program. And again here, doing my shading job. I am extremely nearsighted and I wear glasses. And actually, usually when I'm doing this, I take my glasses off. It's like my superpower that I have this magnifying vision. And I am not doing that right now because when I do that, I put my face about 1.5 inches over the page. And it's so close that I can't film it. So after a little bit of experimentation, I decided to just have my glasses on and be a little bit further away. I think I mentioned before that these were triplets, and I actually forgot to mark that. So I'm going to add my little triplet 3 here. And remember, put one down there. And I will say, usually, like, I don't know, this isn't the most beautiful music I've ever written out, but I do start feeling okay about how things are looking at some point. you know, the hope is that you'll be sort of happy with the output that you create and feel some amount of pride. Time signatures are one of the most fiddly things, and I really did have to look at these examples of them to be like, how exactly do they look? You know, where are the kind of thicker parts in the 3/4? I would definitely take my glasses off and get right in there and look at that to make sure that I had crisp lines. We're going to call that good enough. Your sharps kind of lean upward a little bit and make sure that they are on the lines that you want them to be on. Obviously a lot of music theory learning here too. I studied music when I was, well, a kid. I played clarinet in the band when I was a kid. And that was when I first started learning to read music. But then I studied music too when I was in college. So I kind of got that background already. But boy, is it a deep subject about which I am still learning and feel that I know almost nothing. But music is such a fun thing to learn about, and it doesn't need to be a particularly expensive undertaking, especially with the internet now, and there's so many music theory tutorials and stuff like that that you can do to improve your knowledge. And then, you know, just sitting down and composing on whatever instrument you've got available. It could be a little electronic keyboard or whatever, and learning to write that out. There's a lot there. And I'm going to kick out these staff lines here. Oh, what's that? What's that you say? I'm going to... Pencil always reminded me. Sharpen me. And I'm kind of just flying through this at this point. I don't want you to be bored. I tried to film this video once before, and I was doing like a whole line of music with the vocal part and the instrumental part. And it was kind of funny. I get really into the zone of it. And at one point in the video, I'm like, I wonder how long this video is. Like, I feel like it could be 20 minutes. And it turned out it was almost an hour. And I had no idea that I'd spent so much time working on it, which actually speaks for the enjoyment that I get out of this endeavor. It is a very calm, slow process. And I've gotten a lot out of it over the years. I'd thought about, you know, you can do that thing where you like speed up the video. And I complete the thing in 10 seconds. But I decided I wanted to do a real-time video to get a sense of actually what this process like really looks like. Because it does. I mean, I basically am going over all of this twice. And I have certain refinements that I make around note heads and placement and stuff when I do the final carve in. But, you know, it is very time consuming. And I've written a lot of music out this way. I have no idea how many hours I've spent. And I really don't, like, because they kind of fly by. Filling in the beam here. So, I hope you've liked this video. I'm finishing it up here. And I hope you feel encouraged to try drawing out music in this way. I've had a lot of fun with it, and I'm surprised that there aren't more people making videos showing people how to do this, so I hope mine is useful for you. I haven't really put many videos on YouTube. Videos that I watch, people are always like, if you have any questions, put them in the comments. And, you know, feel free. I have no idea what'll happen here. Maybe I'll get 1,000 views. And, okay, here's the most exciting swirl I'm going to draw on this entire thing. My big, fanciful clefs. The treble clef is an amazing shape that has taken me a long time to feel like I'm kind of getting good at. I really studied it, looked at different examples of how different people have drawn them historically. And I'd say about once every 20 times I draw one, I feel like I did it justice. And this is maybe not going to be one of those times. And the bass clef. Again, mine are pretty eccentric from what you might expect. And lastly here, my brace. I do like drawing braces and have done these differently in different times, but trying to get them more or less symmetrical is pretty fun. Well, I don't have anything particular to say as a wrap up here, other than that I hope you enjoyed this video. And, oh, what's that? Oh yeah,